He was a millionaire who could have any woman, any desire, any fantasy. She was a virgin cleaning lady, innocent, about to step into the dirtiest game of her life. He just wanted to pay a fortune for one night with her. If this story got you hooked, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. The elevator ascended through the 52 floors of the most imposing building on Madison Avenue, with the same surgical precision that Logan Sullivan applied to every aspect of his life. Outside, New York City simmered under the scorching March sun, but inside, on the top floor, the air conditioning maintained an icy temperature that perfectly matched the calculated coldness of the man who commanded this empire. Logan adjusted the cuffs of his Italian shirt while observing the city through the bulletproof glass. At 38, his every movement was measured, every expression carefully controlled. The navy blue silk suit embraced his athletic body like a second skin, and his black eyes reflected the same hardness as the concrete that stretched infinitely below. He had learned from a very early age that showing vulnerability was synonymous with death, and Logan Sullivan had no intention of dying again. The morning meeting had proceeded like all others. Astronomical numbers discussed with the same casualness with which ordinary people talked about the weather. Million-dollar mergers approved with a nod, lives altered with a signature. Power was his most addictive drug, and he consumed increasingly larger doses to keep the ghosts of the past sedated. But that day, something was different. A strange restlessness pulsed in his veins, as if fate was preparing a move he couldn't predict. Logan hated unpredictability. On the other side of the city, in a two-room apartment in Brooklyn, Emma Jones carefully folded the light blue uniform she would wear to work. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from accumulated fatigue. She had slept only 3 hours the night before, after caring for Mrs. Thompson, an elderly neighbor suffering from Alzheimer's, whose children rarely visited. Emma never managed to deny help to those in need, even when she herself could barely support herself. At 23, she carried on her shoulders the weight of someone who never had the luxury of youth. An orphan since 15, she had learned that survival depended on becoming invisible, not bothering anyone, accepting any job that appeared. The temporary cleaning agency was her lifeline that month. The money barely paid the rent, but it was better than nothing. She looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. Her brown hair was tied in a bun that she had perfected to appear serious and trustworthy. Her face was delicate, almost fragile, but her large eyes revealed a determination that few bothered to notice. Emma had learned to hide in plain sight. The bus to Madison Avenue took longer than usual. New York's chaotic traffic seemed to conspire against her, who was already late for her first day in one of the most important buildings in the city. The agency manager had been clear. It's an emergency. The regular employee got sick. You'll clean the executive floor. Don't look at anyone, don't talk to anyone, and especially don't touch anything beyond what you need to clean. The building was a cathedral of glass and steel that touched the clouds. Emma had never set foot in such an imposing place. The marble in the lobby reflected her small, displaced image, like a stain amid so much perfection. The security guard looked at her suspiciously before clearing access to the service elevator. On the 52nd floor, the world was different, silent, luxurious, intimidating. Each object seemed to cost more than her annual salary. Emma began to work with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had learned to be quick and discreet. Her movements were almost dance-like as she organized, cleaned, and aligned everything with reverent care. It was when Logan emerged from the meeting. Room that time stopped. He was discussing acquisitions with 3 executives, his deep voice echoing down the corridor with natural authority. Emma, with her back turned, was organizing papers on the support desk when she felt a magnetic presence behind her. She turned instinctively, and her eyes met his. The impact was physical, like being struck by lightning on a clear day. Logan stopped mid-sentence. The executives continued talking, but he no longer heard anything. He only saw those enormous brown eyes, frightened, beautiful in a way that cut like a sharp blade directly into the center of the chest he had armored with. iron for decades. Emma immediately lowered her gaze, her heart racing in a way she couldn't understand. There was something about this man that both terrified and fascinated her. The intensity of his gaze seemed to strip her completely, seeing through all the masks she had learned to wear. Logan dismissed the executives with an impatient gesture, his eyes still fixed on the delicate figure trying to become invisible in front of him. She was everything he was not, soft where he was sharp, vulnerable where he was armored, pure where he was corrupted. And for the first time in 26 years, Logan Sullivan felt something he had sworn never to feel again, desire mixed with something dangerously close to need. Emma tried to focus on the papers she was organizing, but she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical presence touching her skin. Her hands trembled imperceptibly when she adjusted the documents on the mahogany desk, worth more than all the money she had seen in her entire life. The silence in the corridor was deafening, charged with a tension she couldn't name. Logan couldn't move. There was something about this woman that defied everything he believed he knew about himself. The way she moved, with a natural grace that contrasted with the humility of her cheap uniform, the way she avoided looking at him. But he noticed. She was intensely aware of his presence. It was like watching a deer in the middle of the forest, beautiful and fragile, ready to flee at the slightest sudden movement. "What's your name?" His voice cut through the silence like a blade, deep and controlled, but with an intensity that made Emma startle. She raised her eyes for a fraction of a second before lowering them again. "Emma Jones, sir." Her voice came out weaker than intended, almost a whisper. "I'm from the temporary cleaning agency. I came to replace the employee who got sick." Logan took a step toward her, and Emma instinctively backed away, her back touching the glass wall overlooking the city. He stopped, realizing he had cornered her unintentionally, or perhaps with all the intention in the world. "Emma." He repeated her name as if savoring a rare wine. "Are you afraid of me?" The question caught her off guard. Emma looked directly at him for the first time, and again felt that devastating impact. His eyes were as black as the coffee she drank during sleepless nights, but there was something behind the hardness that intrigued her, an old pain perhaps, a loneliness she recognized because she carried a similar one. "Should I be?" The question escaped her lips before she could censor herself, and she immediately regretted her boldness. A smile touched the corner of Logan's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was a dangerous, predatory smile. "Smart," he murmured, taking another step toward her. "Most people should be afraid of me, Emma. I'm not a good man." His scent enveloped her, a mixture of expensive cologne and something indefinably masculine that made her stomach contract in a completely new way. Emma had never been so close to a man like Logan. In fact, she had never been close to any man. Life hadn't given her time for romances, for discovering the mysteries of desire. But now, trapped between his body and the cold wall, she felt an electric current run through every cell of her being. "I need to finish my work," she managed to say, her voice firmer now, but her heart still racing. "How old are you?" Logan completely ignored her attempt to escape. 23. "That's very young," he said, more to himself than to her. Too young to understand grown-up games. Emma felt a spark of irritation cut through the fear. "I've been working since I was 15, sir. I understand more about life than you imagine." Something changed in his expression. A shadow passed through his eyes, as if she had touched an old wound. Logan knew what it was like to work since childhood. He knew what it was like to have childhood stolen by necessity. For a moment, he saw in her a reflection of himself, before life transformed him into the predator he was today. "Tell me something, Emma." His voice dropped an octave, becoming almost hypnotic. "If I offered you an amount of money that would change your life forever, what would you do?" Her blood froze in her veins. "It would depend on what you expected in return." "One night." The words came without hesitation, direct as a bullet. "One night with me. No questions, no promises, no future. Just one night." Emma's world collapsed beneath her feet. The air seemed to be sucked from her lungs. She stared at him, looking for some sign he was joking, but his eyes were as serious as death. It was a proposal, a commercial transaction, body for money. "You're confusing me with someone who—" she began, her voice trembling with indignation. "I'm not confusing you with anyone," Logan interrupted, his voice even lower. "I know exactly who you are, Emma. A beautiful, intelligent woman who works 3 jobs to survive. A woman who never had real choices in life. I'm offering you one." Tears burned her eyes but didn't fall. Anger, humiliation, and something much more dangerous mixed in her chest. "Why me?" "Because since you entered this room, I can't think of anything else." The confession came out harsh, as if he hated to admit his own weakness. "Because you make me feel things I swore I'd never feel again." Emma observed him for a long moment. There was brutal sincerity in his words, but also a cruelty that made her shudder. He was being honest about his desires, but not about his intentions. There was something more, something he wasn't saying. "How much?" The question escaped her before she could censor herself. The smile that curved Logan's lips was both triumphant and sad. "Enough for you to never again need to kneel on the floor cleaning what others have dirtied." Emma arrived at her tiny apartment with trembling legs and her mind in total chaos. Logan's proposal echoed in her head like a hammer beating against her skull. Each word had been pronounced with the precision of someone accustomed to making deals, but there was something in his eyes, a desperate hunger, that transformed this transaction into something much more dangerous. She looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. There was something different there, a new awareness of herself that had never existed before. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her not as the invisible orphan, not as the disposable cleaner, but as a woman, as an object of desire, and that terrified her as much as it excited her. The money he offered wasn't just an amount, it was freedom. It was the chance to get out of this hole, to study, to become someone. But the price was her dignity, her purity, everything that remained untouched in a world that had tried to destroy her from the beginning. Emma sank onto the narrow bed, hands covering her face. She had never been with a man. She had never had time, opportunity, or even interest. Survival had always been her only priority. But now, closing her eyes, she could smell his cologne, feel the intensity of his gaze, the way his presence had awakened something inside her, something primitive and frightening. On the other side of the city, Logan paced like a caged predator through his penthouse in Tribeca. The view of the city stretched infinitely through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but he saw nothing beyond her face, her enormous, frightened eyes, the way she had trembled when he approached. There was something about Emma that completely destabilized him. Perhaps it was the genuine innocence, something he had forgotten still existed in the world. Or perhaps it was the way she had confronted him, even with fear, showing a courage that most of the powerful men he knew did not possess. Logan stopped in front of the crystal bar and poured 3 fingers of Scottish whiskey. The liquid burned his throat but couldn't drown the memories Emma had awakened. Memories of a time when he too had been vulnerable, when poverty and desperation were his only companions. He was 12 when he found his younger sister, Sophie, on the cold kitchen floor, blue lips, glazed eyes, staring at nothing. His mother had gone out to prostitute herself, as she did every night, and when she returned, drunk and reeking of strange men, she didn't even cry. "One less mouth to feed," she had muttered, and Logan understood in that moment that love was a luxury that people like them couldn't afford. From then on, he promised himself that he would never be weak again, that he would never depend on anyone again, that he would never again let emotions make him vulnerable. He built an empire on the ruins of his own humanity, and it had worked perfectly for 26 years, until Emma appeared and made everything crumble with a glance. The phone rang, pulling him from the dangerous trance. It was Marcus, his right-hand man and the only man he completely trusted. "Have you discovered what I asked?" Logan answered without preamble. "Emma Jones, 23 years old, orphan since 15, works for 3 different cleaning agencies, lives in Brooklyn, no debts or vices, clean as a rose." Marcus paused. But Logan, there's something strange here. What? Her mother's maiden name, it was Vincent before she got married, Ellen Vincent. Logan's blood froze in his veins. Vincent. The same surname as the man who had destroyed his family, who had indirectly caused Sophie's death, who had been his mortal enemy for years until mysteriously disappearing 2 decades ago. Are you sure? His voice came out hoarse, dangerous. Absolutely, I found the birth certificate. Ellen Vincent Jones, Emma's mother, and Logan... Marcus hesitated. Ellen ran away from home at 15. She was pregnant. The child's father was never officially identified, but there are records that she worked for Alexander Vincent at the time. Alexander Vincent. The name echoed in Logan's mind like a scream from hell. The man who had tried to assassinate him 3 times, the man who had blackmailed, tortured, and destroyed dozens of families to build his own empire. The man who had disappeared 20 years ago, leaving behind a trail of blood and destruction. And Emma was his daughter. The irony was so cruel that Logan laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Fate had placed his greatest enemy's daughter in his arms, innocent and pure, not knowing who she really was or where she came from. It was as if the universe were mocking him, offering perfect revenge wrapped in silk and innocence. But when he closed his eyes and saw her face again, the thirst for revenge mixed with something much more dangerous. Possessiveness. Need. Desire to protect instead of destroy. Don't tell anyone else, Logan ordered, his voice deadly. And, Marcus, I want you to find out everything about Alexander Vincent. Where he is, what he's done these 20 years, if he's still alive. Everything. When he hung up the phone, Logan looked again at the city he dominated. Now he knew why. Emma had caused such a reaction in him. Vincent's blood ran in her veins, but she didn't know. She was innocent of her father's crimes, a victim just as he had been. And that made everything infinitely more complicated. Because now Logan needed to decide if Emma Jones would be his redemption or his final destruction. And for the first time in decades, he didn't know which of the 2 options terrified him more. 3 days passed in silent agony. Emma couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate on anything besides the proposal echoing in her mind like an obsessive mantra. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, felt the intensity of that black gaze that seemed to strip her soul bare. The electricity bill arrived with a disconnection notice. The rent was late again. The refrigerator had been empty for 2 days. Emma looked at the card Logan had discreetly left on the table while she was organizing papers. A simple black card, just a phone number, engraved in gold letters. Her hands trembled when she dialed the number. He answered on the first ring as if he had been waiting. Emma. His voice crossed the telephone line like a caress and a threat at the same time. I accept. The words came out quickly before she lost courage. But I have conditions. A long silence from the other side, then a low, almost hoarse laugh. Who you want to negotiate with me? Interesting. What are your conditions? I want the money in advance, half before, half after, and I want your word that this stays between us, forever. Done. A car will pick you up at 8 tonight. Wear something. Pretty, Emma? Tonight you'll be treated like a queen. The call ended and Emma stood staring at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. What had she just done? She had sold her virginity to a man she barely knew, a man who emanated danger from every pore. But it was too late to turn back. Logan hung up the phone and stood still for a long moment. Excitement ran through his veins like liquid fire, but there was something more. Something he didn't want to name, didn't want to accept. It was more than physical desire. It was an almost desperate need to have her, to prove she was real, to discover if that purity he saw in her could survive contact with his darkness. At 8 o'clock sharp, a black Mercedes stopped in front of the dilapidated building where Emma lived. She had managed to borrow a simple black dress from her neighbor. It was too small and too cheap, but it was the best she could arrange. Her hair was loose for the first time in years, falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and she had applied a little lipstick she found at the bottom of her purse. The driver treated her with a reverent courtesy that made her even more nervous. During the journey to Tribeca, Emma looked through the tinted windows and saw a world that had never been hers. Expensive restaurants, designer stores, imported cars. A completely different universe from her own. Logan's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building that was a work of art in itself. When the private elevator doors opened directly into his apartment, Emma felt as if she had entered a movie. Everything was impeccable, modern, expensive. The huge windows showed New York illuminated like a sea of stars. Logan was waiting for her with 2 glasses of champagne. He had traded his suit for a white linen shirt, open at the chest and dark pants. He was barefoot, and this informality somehow made him even more dangerous, more masculine, more real. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her a glass. His eyes traveled over every inch of her with an intensity that made her skin heat up. Emma accepted the glass with trembling hands. The champagne was different from anything she had ever tasted, light and effervescent, expensive like everything else in that place. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question. Yes. She saw no point in lying. Logan approached slowly, as if she were a wild animal that might run away at any moment. "Do you want to change your mind? I can have the driver take you back right now." Emma looked into his eyes and saw something she didn't expect, genuine concern, as if, despite the sordid proposal, he really cared about her well-being. "No," she said, and her voice came out firmer than she felt. "I don't change my mind easily." The smile that curved his lips was different from all the others she had seen, softer, almost tender. "Good girl." He led her to the terrace, where a table had been prepared with a meal that seemed to have come from a 5-star restaurant. Emma had never eaten such refined food, had never been served by someone who treated her as if she were important. During dinner they talked. Logan asked questions about her life, her dreams, her fears, and to her surprise, he seemed genuinely interested in the answers. He also told her about himself, not the sordid details, but fragments of a difficult childhood that explained the hardness in his eyes. "Why me?" Emma asked when they finished eating, her courage fueled by the champagne and the way he looked at her, as if she were the only thing in the world that mattered. Logan was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the illuminated horizon of the city. "Because when I look at you, I remember who I was before I became this." He gestured vaguely around. "Before I became a monster." "You're not a monster." The words came out without her thinking. He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Emma, you know nothing about me, about the things I've done, the people I've destroyed to get where I am." "Then tell me." "No." The answer was firm, final. "Tonight you are my fantasy of purity. I won't soil you with my reality." When he stood up and extended his hand to her, Emma knew the moment had come. Her legs trembled when she stood, but she didn't back away. She had made her decision and would live with the consequences. His bedroom was a symphony in dark tones, dominated by a huge bed that seemed like an altar for intimate rituals. Logan stopped her in the middle of the room and simply looked at her as if he wanted to memorize every detail. "Last chance, Emma." She responded by approaching him and touching his face with trembling hands. His skin was warm, rough from the stubble. When she leaned in and touched her lips to his, it was like completing an electrical circuit. The kiss was soft at first, almost hesitant, as if Logan were trying to contain the storm raging inside him. But when Emma responded, when her lips opened slightly under his, something broke. The control he maintained with an iron hand over every aspect of his life disappeared like smoke. His hands found her face, fingers burying in the brown hair that was silkier than he had imagined. Emma was pure contradiction in his arms, trembling with nervousness, but surrendering with a courage that made him feel as if he were holding something sacred. "Emma," he murmured against her lips, and the name came out like a prayer, like a confession. "Are you sure?" In response, she pressed her body against his, small and delicate against his larger frame, but brave in a way that made his heart race. "Yes." The night that followed was a revelation for both. Logan, accustomed to mechanical and empty encounters, discovered that making love could be something transcendental when there was a real connection. Each touch, each sigh, each moment of mutual vulnerability was like rediscovering sensations he had forgotten existed. Emma, in turn, understood for the first time why poets wrote about passion as if it were religion. In Logan's hands, her body awakened to pleasures she didn't know existed. He was patient, careful, almost reverent in the way he touched her, as if she were made of precious crystal. When they finally fell asleep, intertwined among the silk sheets, something fundamental had changed in both of them. What should have been a commercial transaction had transformed into something much more dangerous, something that neither of them was prepared to face. Logan woke first, in the middle of the night. Emma slept nestled against his chest, her hair spread across the pillow, her face relaxed in deep sleep. She looked even younger sleeping, vulnerable in a way that made something ache in his chest. For the first time in decades, Logan allowed himself to feel something beyond anger, ambition, or thirst for revenge. Looking at her, he felt an overwhelming tenderness that terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced, because tenderness was weakness. Tenderness was what had killed Sophie. Tenderness was a luxury that men like him couldn't afford. But when Emma stirred in her sleep and murmured his name, he knew it was already too late. She had infiltrated his defenses like a silent virus, and now infected every thought, every heartbeat. Emma woke with the sun streaming through the enormous windows. For a moment, she was disoriented, not recognizing the luxurious place where she was. Then the memories came flooding back, and she blushed to the roots of her hair. She was in Logan Sullivan's bed. She had spent the night with him. She had completely given herself to a man she barely knew. She turned to look at him and found him already awake, watching her with an intensity that made her stomach contract. There was something different in his eyes, a softness that wasn't there the night before. "Good morning," she whispered, suddenly conscious of her nakedness beneath the sheets. "Good morning, beautiful." The affectionate nickname came naturally, and Emma felt her heart accelerate. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, not knowing how to act. What did one say the morning after a night like that? How did one behave with a man who had paid for her company, but had treated her like a princess? Logan got up and returned with a silk robe that enveloped her, as if she were made of porcelain. "I'll ask them to prepare breakfast. You must be hungry." During breakfast, served on the terrace with a view of the city already bustling below, they maintained a strangely normal conversation, as if they were an ordinary couple on a Sunday morning, not two people involved in a transaction that defied all of Emma's moral codes. It was when Logan got up to answer the phone that everything changed. "Mr. Sullivan." The voice on the other end of the line was cold, calculating, feminine. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Logan immediately recognized the voice and felt his blood freeze. Bianca Morrison, ex-lover, heiress to a rival empire, and one of the most dangerous people he knew. "Bianca, what do you want?" "Just congratulating you on your new acquisition." "Emma Jones, isn't it? 23 years old, orphan, works as a cleaner. Very exotic for your usual standards." The implicit threat made Logan clench his free fist until his knuckles turned white. "How did you—" "Oh, darling, you should know I have eyes everywhere. And I must say I'm fascinated by this new obsession of yours, especially considering who she really is." "What are you talking about?" Bianca's laugh was like breaking glass. "Emma Jones, daughter of Ellen Vincent, granddaughter of Alexander Vincent. You remember him, don't you? The man who destroyed your family. How deliciously ironic. You're fucking your greatest enemy's daughter." Logan's world collapsed. Bianca knew. She knew about Emma, about Vincent, about everything, and if Bianca knew, soon the entire New York underworld would know too. "What do you want?" he repeated, his voice deadly. "A meeting. Tonight. Come alone." "And Logan?" Her voice grew even colder. "Leave your new pet at home. It would be a shame if something happened to her because of Daddy's sins." The call ended, and Logan stood staring at the phone as if it were an armed bomb. From the terrace, he could hear Emma humming softly while drinking coffee, and the sound was like a stab in the chest. He had put her life in danger. Through his own arrogance, through his selfish need to possess her, he had painted a target on her back. And the worst part was that she had no idea who she really was, what blood ran in her veins, that she was at the center of a war that had begun long before she was born. When he returned to the terrace, Emma smiled at him with such sweetness that Logan felt something shatter inside his chest. How could he protect her from a world that wanted her dead? How could he keep his claws away from an innocence that was already stained simply by existing? "Are you okay?" Emma asked, noticing the change in his expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Logan forced a smile and leaned in to kiss her forehead. "I'm fine, just business." But inside he knew he had just lied, and that this could be the last morning of peace they would have together for a very long time. Logan spent the rest of the day like a man possessed by demons. He sent Emma home with the driver, promising they would meet again soon, but avoiding her eyes when she tried to kiss him goodbye. Every protective instinct he possessed screamed to keep her close, but how could he explain without revealing truths? That would destroy her. The meeting with Bianca was set for 10 o'clock at the Pierre Hotel, in one of the private salons she had reserved. Logan arrived armed and accompanied by 2 security guards who remained outside. He had known Bianca long, enough to know she was capable of anything when she felt threatened or rejected. Bianca Morrison was impeccable as always. Platinum hair tied in a sophisticated chignon, red dress that cost more than a luxury car, jewelry that sparkled like deadly stars. At 35, she was a predator at the height of her form, beautiful and lethal in equal proportions. "Logan, darling." She stood to greet him, trying to kiss his cheek, but he moved away. Her smile became sharper. "Always so charming." "Cut the theater, Bianca. What do you want?" She poured 2 glasses of French wine, ignoring the fact that he hadn't accepted. "I want you to come back to me, simple as that." Logan laughed, but the sound was as harsh as sandpaper. "And you think blackmail is the way?" "Blackmail, Bianca?" Feigned surprise bringing her hand to her chest. "I'm just concerned about your safety. You know how dangerous it is to get involved with people from the past, especially when that person carries Alexander Vincent's blood." "Emma has nothing to do with what happened between us and Vincent." "Of course she does." Bianca leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "She's his daughter, Logan. The blood is the same. Betrayals are hereditary. Do you really think it's a coincidence she appeared in your life right now?" The doubt Bianca planted was like a worm crawling through Logan's mind. What if it wasn't a coincidence? What if Emma knew who she was from the beginning? What if everything was just an elaborate revenge plan? "You're delusional." "Am I?" Bianca took an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "Take a look." Logan opened the envelope and felt the world spin around him. They were photographs. Emma entering a building downtown. Emma talking to a man in a dark suit. Emma handing an envelope to the same man. "Interesting, isn't it?" Bianca whispered. "Your innocent virgin has been having secret meetings for 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks after meeting you." The photographs were dated. Real. Logan studied, each one looking for signs of manipulation, but everything seemed authentic. The man in the photos was someone he didn't recognize, but there was something familiar about him, something that made his stomach churn. "Who is he?" "Mark Vincent, Alexander's cousin, and apparently your dear Emma's uncle." Bianca savored, each word like expensive wine. "It seems the family is reuniting, Logan, and you are the target." Logan put the photographs in the inside pocket of his jacket, his mind working furiously. If the photos were real, then Emma had lied to him from the beginning. She had feigned innocence, feigned vulnerability, all to get close to him and... Do what? Kill him, destroy his business, avenge her family? "What do you gain from this?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "Your gratitude, your return, and the elimination of a threat." Bianca stood up and walked around the table, stopping behind him and placing her hands on his shoulders. "Let me take care of the girl, Logan. You don't need to dirty your hands." "Don't touch her." The order came out with such coldness that Bianca backed away. "If you lay a finger on Emma, I will destroy you in ways you can't even imagine." Bianca's face contorted in fury. "You choose this tramp over me? I who have been by your side for years, who know your secrets, who never managed to make me feel anything beyond boredom. Logan stood up, dominating her with his height. It's over, Bianca, forever. And if I find out that you fabricated these photographs— I didn't fabricate anything, she spat the words. But you'll find that out in the worst possible way. And when you discover who Emma really is, who she has always been, you'll remember me. Logan left the hotel without looking back, but the photographs burned in his pocket like hot embers. During the ride back home, his mind oscillated between anger and despair. If Emma had been lying, if everything was just an act, then he had become vulnerable for nothing. He had fallen in love with an illusion. But there was something about the photographs that didn't fit. Emma's body language wasn't that of someone plotting a conspiracy. She seemed scared, reluctant, as if she were being forced to do something against her will. When he reached the penthouse, Logan went straight to the bar and poured a triple shot of whiskey. He needed to think clearly, separate facts from emotions. He needed to discover the truth before it was too late. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Emma was sitting on her narrow bed, looking at the card she had received 2 weeks ago. A simple card, with just an address and a time. The man who had sought her out introduced himself as Mark, said he had information about her mother, about her true family. The meetings had been strange, disturbing. Mark talked about a father. She had never known about an empire built on blood and betrayal, about enemies who had destroyed her family. And now he wanted her to do something that involved Logan. He killed your father, Mark had said at the last meeting. Logan Sullivan destroyed Alexander Vincent, and now you have the chance to avenge your family. Emma had run from that meeting, her heart shattered, because if Logan had really killed her father, then she was in love with the murderer of her own family. And if he hadn't killed him, then Mark was lying, using her for his own obscure purposes. She looked at the phone, wanting to call Logan, wanting to hear his voice, wanting him to explain everything. But how could she ask about something she shouldn't know? How could she confess that she had lied by omission, that she had met with strangers behind his back? The truth was there, between them, like a bomb about to explode. And when it exploded, Emma knew it would destroy everything she had begun to build. The love, the trust, the hope for a different future. Everything would disappear like smoke, leaving only ashes and regret. Logan couldn't sleep for 3 consecutive nights. The photographs seemed to burn a hole in his desk, where he had left them spread out like tarot cards predicting disaster. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's face, the frightened expression in the photos, and felt as if he were being torn apart inside. On the 4th morning, he couldn't stand it anymore. He picked up the phone and called her. "Logan?" Emma's voice on the other end of the line was laden with relief and anxiety. "I was hoping you'd call. We need to talk." "Yes, we do." The coldness in his voice made her heart sink. "My apartment. Now." The journey to Tribeca was torture for Emma. She had made a decision during those sleepless nights. She would tell Logan everything. About Mark, about the allegations against him, about her true identity. She couldn't live anymore lying to the man she was hopelessly falling in love with. When she arrived at the penthouse, she found Logan standing in front of the enormous windows. Hands in his pockets, his posture rigid as marble. He didn't turn when she entered. "You lied to me. It wasn't a question." Emma felt her blood freeze in her veins. "Logan." 3 weeks, Emma. For 3 weeks you looked me in the eyes and lied. He finally turned, and the coldness in his gaze made her take a step back. "Who is Mark Vincent?" The name hit Emma like a punch to the stomach. How did he know? "How did you—" "That doesn't matter." Logan approached her with measured, dangerous steps. "What matters is that my business partner has been secretly meeting with members of the family that tried to destroy me." "It's not like that," Emma tried to explain, the words coming out jumbled. "I didn't know who you were when he approached me. He said he had information about my mother, about my father." "Your father?" Logan laughed, but the sound was as cutting as broken glass. "Alexander Vincent." The man who murdered my sister. Emma's world collapsed. What? Ah, you didn't know that, did you? Logan stopped in front of her, so close that she could see the flames of fury dancing in his black eyes. Didn't know that your dear daddy was responsible for the death of a 12-year-old child? That he ordered the fire that killed Sophie? No. Emma shook her head violently. That can't be true. Mark said that you killed my father. Mark lied. Logan's voice was laden with a pain so old and deep that it made Emma want to cry. Your father disappeared like the coward he always was after he discovered I had survived and was after him, but not before destroying everything I loved. Emma let herself fall onto the sofa, her legs no longer able to support her. I didn't know. I swear to God, Logan, I didn't know any of this. Didn't know. Logan took the photographs from his pocket and threw them on the coffee table, then explained this to me. Emma looked at the images and felt nausea. There she was, entering the building where she had met Mark, talking to him, handing the envelope, she whispered. They were photographs of you. He said he needed them to protect our family from you. Protect. Logan repeated the word as if it were poisonous. You gave photographs of me to the enemy and call that protection? I was confused. Emma stood up, desperate to make him understand. He appeared out of nowhere saying he was my uncle, that my mother had fled from a violent man, that you were dangerous. I didn't know who to believe. And yet, you slept with me. The accusation cut like a blade. Even suspecting I was a murderer, you came to my bed. The tears Emma had been holding finally overflowed, because when I'm with you nothing else matters, because you make me feel, because you what, Emma? Logan approached again, his voice dangerously low. Because you love me? Or because that was always the mission? How can you ask that? The pain in her voice was genuine, visceral. After everything we've experienced, how can you think I was pretending? Because you are Alexander Vincent's daughter, Logan exploded, all the anger and fear he had been containing bursting out. Because betrayal runs in your blood. Because every Vincent I've known was a liar, a manipulator, a destroyer of lives. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma stared at him with enormous wounded eyes, as if he had just slowly killed her. I see. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. For you, I was never Emma. I was never the woman you met. I was always just the blood I carry. Logan saw the devastating pain in her eyes and felt something shatter irreparably inside him, but the anger, the fear, the traumas of a lifetime were stronger than any new emotion. Leave, he said, turning his back on her. Leave and don't come back. Emma stood still for a long moment, hoping he would change his mind, that he would turn around, that he would call her back. But Logan remained motionless, looking out the window as if she had already ceased to exist. I love you, she said, her voice broken. No matter what you believe, no matter whose blood I came from, I love you, Logan. He didn't answer, didn't turn around. He simply stood there, a statue of ice and pain, until he heard the door close behind her. When he finally turned, the apartment was empty, but her perfume still floated in the air like a ghost. Logan let himself fall onto the sofa, his head in his hands, and for the first time in decades he let the tears fall. Outside the building, Emma cried uncontrollably on a park bench, unable to move. Everything she had begun to dream about, everything she had begun to build, had crumbled in a matter of minutes. Her phone rang. It was Mark. Emma? Where are you? We need to meet now. I don't want to know anything more about this, she sobbed. Leave me alone. I'm afraid that's not possible, dear niece. Mark's voice turned cold, threatening. You're already too involved to back out. And we have a special visitor arriving today, someone who is very eager to meet the daughter he lost. Emma's blood froze. My father. Alexander is coming home, Emma. And he has plans for you. Plans that involve Logan, Sullivan finally paying for his crimes. The call ended, and Emma stood staring at the phone with growing terror. She was trapped between two worlds, two contradictory truths, two men who claimed the other was a monster. And now the ghost of the past was returning to collect debts she didn't even know existed. Alexander Vincent wasn't what Emma had imagined. At 62, he maintained the imposing bearing and penetrating gaze that had made him one of the most feared men in the American underworld 2 decades earlier. Perfectly groomed grey hair, impeccable Italian suit, calculated movements that conveyed absolute power. But there was something about him that chilled the blood, a coldness in his blue eyes that Emma recognized as her own, but amplified in a terrifying way. They met at a discreet restaurant in Greenwich Village, away from curious eyes. Emma had arrived with trembling hands, still devastated by the confrontation with Logan, and now found herself before the man who was supposedly her biological father. "My daughter." Alexander stood when she approached the table, and Emma noticed how his voice was silky, hypnotic, dangerous. 23 years waiting for this moment. Emma sat down, keeping her distance. "If you're really my father, why did you never look for me before?" Alexander smiled, but the gesture didn't warm his eyes. "Because I was building an empire to leave to you, little one, and because I needed you to grow up away from the violence that surrounds our family. Your mother did right by running away, even if I hate her for it. Mark said you left, that you abandoned my pregnant mother. Mark has his own versions of the truth." Alexander gestured vaguely. "The reality is that Ellen ran away because she discovered my business. She was afraid, wanted to protect you. I respected that decision, even if it broke my heart." Emma studied his face, looking for signs of lying, but Alexander was a master at hiding his true intentions. "And now? Why now?" "Because Logan Sullivan crossed a line." The mask of paternal affection slipped for a moment, revealing the icy fury underneath. "He touched you, Emma, my daughter, and that's something I cannot forgive." "He didn't hurt me." Alexander laughed, a harsh sound. "Didn't hurt you? You're here crying, shattered because he rejected you as soon as he discovered who you were. He used you, daughter, like he uses all women." The words were like salt in an open wound. Emma lowered her eyes, still feeling the pain of Logan's contempt, the way he had looked at her as if she were toxic waste. "But it's not too late for revenge." Alexander leaned forward, his voice low and persuasive. "You can make Logan Sullivan pay for everything he did, to our family, to you, to your mother's memory." "I don't want revenge," Emma murmured. "I just want to stay away from all this." "I'm afraid that's not an option, dear daughter." The gentleness disappeared completely from Alexander's voice. "You're already too involved. Logan knows who you are. My enemies know you exist. There's no going back." Emma felt a current of fear run down her spine. "What does that mean?" "It means you have a very simple choice." Alexander leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her like a predator evaluating its prey. "Either you stand by my side and help destroy Logan Sullivan, or what? Or I deliver you to him as a gift. Let him do to you what he did to our family." Emma's blood froze. For the first time, she understood that she wasn't dealing with a loving father who had finally found her. She was facing a psychopath who viewed even his own daughter as a piece in his deadly chess game. "You're not my father," she whispered, the truth hitting her like lightning. "Fathers don't threaten their children." Alexander smiled again, and this time the gesture was purely predatory. "Oh, but I am, little one, and you'll discover that fathers sometimes do terrible things for their children and to their children." On the other side of the city, Logan was immersed in whiskey and remorse when Marcus burst into his office without knocking. "Logan, we have a problem." Marcus threw a folder on the desk. "Alexander Vincent is back, and he's after Emma." The mention of her name made Logan sharply raise his head. "How do you know?" "My contact's at the airport. He arrived this morning, private flight from Lisbon." "And Logan?" Marcus hesitated. "He brought men, lots of men." Logan opened the folder and felt his stomach sink. Photographs of Alexander at the airport, accompanied by at least 6 men who clearly weren't tourists. Reports of activity at luxury hotels, reservations for armored cars, suspicious movement at abandoned warehouses. "He's preparing for war," Logan murmured. "And Emma is right in the middle." Marcus leaned over the desk. "Logan, she may be lying about many things, but not about being in danger. Alexander doesn't leave witnesses alive, not even relatives." The revelation hit Logan like a punch to the stomach. All the photographs, all the secret meetings, all of Emma's confusion. She wasn't conspiring against him. She was being manipulated, threatened, used as bait by a man who had no scruples even with his own daughter. My God. Logan ran his hands through his hair. "What have I done?" "You protected your heart," Marcus said gently. "But now you need to protect her." Logan stood up abruptly, his mind already working furiously. "Where is she?" "Last location was in Greenwich Village. Terrazza restaurant. Left there an hour ago, accompanied by Alexander." The fear Logan felt was physical, as if someone had squeezed his insides with iron claws. Emma was alone with Alexander Vincent, the most dangerous man he knew, a psychopath, who had killed his own wife when he discovered she wanted to leave him. "Mobilize all men," Logan ordered, already getting the gun from the safe. "I want Alexander found in 2 hours. And if he's using her as a human shield..." Logan stopped, his hand frozen on the doorknob. Marcus's question was valid and terrifying. Alexander was known to use innocent people as protection, especially if they were important to his enemies. "Then we'll have to be smarter than him," Logan finally said, "because I'm not going to let Emma die for my sins." As he left the office, Logan felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, true terror, not for himself but for someone else. And he understood with devastating clarity that he was hopelessly in love with Emma Jones, regardless of what blood ran in her veins. He just hoped it wasn't too late to save her, because if Alexander harmed her, Logan would burn all of New York City to find him, and this time there would be no mercy. Emma realized she had made a fatal mistake when the car that was supposed to take her back home took a completely different direction. Beside her, Alexander smiled with the satisfaction of a predator who had captured his prey exactly where he wanted. "Where are we going?" She tried to keep her voice firm, but fear was a living presence in her chest. "To a place where you'll be safe while I settle some pending matters with your boyfriend." Alexander didn't take his eyes from the window. "Logan has always been impulsive. I'm sure he'll come running when he knows you're with me." The car stopped at an abandoned industrial warehouse in Queens, far from any urban movement. Emma was taken inside by 2 men who didn't say a word, and what she saw there made her blood freeze. The place had been transformed into a kind of temporary fortress, with armed men, communication equipment, and an atmosphere of imminent violence. "Welcome to the temporary headquarters, daughter." Alexander gestured around with sinister pride. "From here we'll orchestrate Logan Sullivan's final fall." Emma was taken to a small improvised office at the back of the warehouse, where Alexander sat behind a desk as if he were a king on his throne. "Now tell me everything about Logan, his routines, his weaknesses, his fears." Alexander interlaced, his fingers studying her intensely, "especially what he feels for you." "I won't help you hurt Logan." "No?" Alexander laughed coldly. "Then perhaps you'd prefer I tell him about how your dear mother died." Emma's heart stopped. "My mother died of cancer." "Your mother died because she discovered my plans and tried to betray me. Like you're doing now." Alexander rose slowly, walking around the desk. "Ellen was always weak, sentimental, thought love could conquer everything. I showed her how wrong she was." The reality hit Emma like a hammer. You killed her. I punished her for her betrayal, as I'll punish you if you don't cooperate." Alexander stopped in front of her, his voice low and deadly. "The difference is that this time Logan will be watching." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Logan was coordinating the largest search operation he had ever mounted. Cars were searching every neighborhood. Contacts in the underworld were being pressured. Surveillance systems were being hacked. Marcus worked on the phone like a man possessed, activating every favor owed, every informant, every source they... As we found something, Marcus burst into the office 3 hours later. Industrial warehouse in Long Island City. Suspicious movement, armored cars, armed men, it's him. Logan stood immediately, checking his gun. How many men? At least 8 that we could identify. But Logan... Marcus hesitated. It's an obvious trap. Alexander wants you to go there. I know. Logan put on the bulletproof vest with mechanical movements, but I have no choice. He has Emma. Then we bring everyone, all our force. No. Logan shook his head. If we arrive with an army, he kills Emma first and asks questions later. I need to go alone. That's suicide. Logan stopped at the door, looking at Marcus with an expression his friend had never seen before. Desperation mixed with absolute determination. Marcus, if I die today, I want you to know that I regret nothing, except letting Emma leave my apartment believing I didn't love her. Logan, take care of the business. And if I don't come back, take care of her too. The journey to the warehouse was the longest of Logan's life. At each block, at each stoplight, he thought of Emma, of how he had treated her, of the cruel words he had said. If he died today, she would forever believe that he had rejected her because of her blood. The warehouse was exactly what he expected, an improvised fortress with armed men strategically positioned. Logan stopped the car 100 meters from the entrance and got out with his hands raised, the gun clearly visible in his holster, but without touching it. "Alexander," he shouted, "I'm here alone as you wanted." A side door opened and 2 men emerged, escorting Logan inside. The interior of the warehouse was dimly lit, but he could see Alexander standing in the center, a triumphant smile on his face. Logan Sullivan. Finally. Alexander opened his arms as if receiving an old friend. 20 years waiting for this moment. "Where's Emma?" Logan went straight to the point. "Safe, for now." Alexander gestured, and Emma was brought from the back of the warehouse. Logan's heart almost stopped when he saw her. She was pale, with eyes red from crying, but apparently unharmed. When their eyes met across the distance, he saw everything he needed to see. She still loved him, despite everything. "Let her go, Alexander. Your problem is with me." "Ah, but you're mistaken." Alexander approached Emma, placing a possessive hand on her shoulder. "My daughter is an integral part of my revenge. You see, Logan, I'm not just going to kill you. I'm going to make you watch while I destroy everything you love. Starting with her." "No." Emma moved violently away from Alexander. "I'm not your daughter. A father doesn't use his children as weapons." Alexander looked at her with icy contempt. "You're just like your mother, weak, sentimental, pathetic." It was then that Logan understood something fundamental. Alexander was lying. About everything. Emma wasn't his daughter. She was something else, something he was using to manipulate her and lure him. "She's not your daughter," Logan said, certainty growing in his voice. "You're lying." Alexander laughed, but there was nervousness in the laugh. "Of course she is, Ellen Vincent." "Never existed," Logan interrupted. "Ellen Jones was her real name, and you kidnapped her, didn't you? Used her, tortured her until you got a child to raise as your personal weapon." The silence that followed was revealing. Alexander had stopped smiling, and Emma was looking at him with growing horror. "Even if it were true," Alexander began. "It is true." A new voice cut through the air. Mark Vincent emerged from the shadows, but no longer as Alexander's ally. "Emma, your real father was a police officer investigating our family. Alexander killed him, kidnapped your mother, and when you were born, he planned to use you against Logan when the time came." "Mark," Alexander turned, the betrayal clear in his eyes. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 20 years ago." Mark pulled out a gun. "Ending you before you destroy more innocent lives." What happened next was total chaos. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse. Men ran in all directions, and through the confusion, Logan saw only one thing. Emma was in the middle of the line of fire, defenseless and terrified. Without thinking, he threw himself toward her, determined to protect her even if it cost his own life. Logan hit Emma in a desperate dive, knocking her to the ground and covering her body with his own as bullets cut through the air above them. The warehouse had transformed into a war zone, echoes of gunshots ricocheting off the metal walls, screams of wounded men piercing the night. "Are you hurt?" Logan murmured against her ear, his hands quickly running over her body looking for wounds. No. Emma was trembling violently, but her eyes were fixed on his with an intensity that cut through the chaos. "Logan, I'm so sorry for everything. I should have told you about Mark from the beginning." "Shh," he pressed his forehead against hers. "None of that matters now. All that matters is that you're alive." A shot hit the ground inches from their heads, sending sparks from the concrete. Logan rolled with Emma behind a pile of wooden crates, offering temporary protection. From across the warehouse, Alexander roared orders to his men while exchanging gunfire with Mark. "Kill them all, but leave Logan alive. I want him to watch Emma die." "How do we get out of here?" Emma asked, her voice surprisingly calm despite the terror of the situation. Logan quickly assessed the exits. The main one was blocked by Alexander's men. There was a side door, but it would mean crossing open ground under heavy fire, and a staircase leading to an elevated walkway from where they could have a strategic advantage. "We'll go up." He indicated the staircase with a nod. "When I count to 3, we run. Don't look back. Don't stop for anything." Emma nodded, her jaw firm with determination. "Together." "Together," Logan confirmed, and something passed between them in that moment, a deep understanding that transcended words. 1, 2, 3. They ran as if their lives depended on it, because they did. Bullets whistled around them, one tearing a piece from Logan's shirt sleeve, another leaving a burn mark in Emma's hair. But they reached the staircase, climbing the metal steps, 2 at a time. From the walkway, Logan had a clear view of the situation. Mark had been wounded and was cornered behind industrial machinery. 3 of Alexander's men lay motionless on the floor. Alexander himself had positioned behind a pillar, using it as a shield while shouting threats. "Emma!" Alexander bellowed, his voice echoing through the warehouse. "You can end this now. Come to me and I'll let Logan live." "Don't believe him." Logan held her arm when Emma took a step toward the railing. "He'll kill us either way." "I know." Emma looked at him with deep sadness. "But Logan, if something happens to me—" "Nothing is going to happen to you." His voice was pure iron. "I won't let it." It was then that Emma saw something Logan hadn't noticed. A fuel can had been punctured by a bullet, and the liquid was slowly spreading across the warehouse floor. A desperate idea formed in her mind. "Logan, do you have a lighter?" He looked at her as if she had gone mad. "Emma, no." "It's the only chance." She extended her hand. "Trust me." After a moment of hesitation, Logan took the lighter from his pocket. Emma grabbed it and ran down the stairs before he could stop her. "Emma, no!" Logan shouted, but she was already on the warehouse floor. "Alexander!" she shouted, stopping in the center of the open space, the lighter held above her head. "It's over. You lost." Alexander emerged from behind the pillar, the gun pointed at her, but there was confusion in his eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" "What my mother should have done 23 years ago." Emma looked at him with absolute contempt. "Destroying you before you destroyed more lives." She flicked the lighter. The small flame seemed insignificant for a moment, until it touched the fuel spread on the floor. The fire spread with terrible speed, creating a circle of flames around Alexander and his remaining men. Panic took over the warehouse. Alexander's men ran toward the exits, abandoning him. Alexander fired at Emma, but she had rolled away, protected by the very flames she had created. Logan descended the stairs, jumping several steps, crossed the flames in an impossible leap, and reached Emma, picking her up in his arms and running toward the side exit while the fire spread throughout the structure. Outside, breathless and covered in soot, they watched the warehouse being consumed by flames. Mark had managed to escape, wounded but alive. There was no sign of Alexander. "It's over," Emma whispered, collapsing against Logan's chest. "Finally over." Logan held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. kissing her hair, her face, any part he could reach. "Emma, forgive me, for everything I said, for not trusting you, for—" Shh. Now it was she who silenced him. "We both made mistakes. But you came to save me, even thinking I had betrayed you. Because I love you." The words came out raw, vulnerable, true. "I love you more than my own life, more than my pride, more than my fears. Emma Jones, you are everything good in me." "I love you too." She touched his face with trembling hands. "Even when I thought you hated me, even when everything seemed lost, you are my light in the darkness, Logan." The kiss they shared there, while the fire purified the ghosts of the past behind them, was different from all others. It was a seal, a promise, a new beginning. It was two survivors choosing to build something beautiful on the ruins of their pain. 6 months later, Emma was standing on the terrace of the penthouse, watching the sunset gild New York City. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair loose in the wind, a genuine smile lighting her face. Logan had insisted she move in, not as property or conquest, but as a companion, as an equal, as the woman who had transformed his life. Logan approached from behind, wrapping her in his arms. "What are you thinking about?" "About how everything has changed." Emma nestled against him. "A year ago I was cleaning offices, invisible to the world. Today I'm finishing my business degree, working by your side in the business, being seen." "You were always visible to me." Logan kissed her temple. "From the first moment." Emma turned in his arms, studying the face of the man who had become her entire life. The hard lines had softened. His eyes no longer carried that deadly coldness. Love had humanized him in ways he never imagined possible. "Emma." Logan moved slightly away, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know our beginning was complicated, but I want our future to be different. I want it to be ours." Emma covered her mouth with her hands when he knelt, opening the box to reveal a ring that captured the setting sun's light, like fire trapped in crystal. "Marry me." It wasn't a request, it was a plea. "Not because you need to, not for money or security, but because you chose to love me despite everything I am. Yes." The answer came without hesitation, accompanied by tears of happiness. Yes, 1,000 times yes. When Logan slid the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, Emma knew she was finally home. Not in the place, but in the heart of the man who had learned to love not despite her darkness, but through it until finding the light. They had been born from different worlds, wounded by brutal pasts, united by the cruel irony of fate. But they chose to write their own ending. They chose that love be stronger than revenge, that redemption be possible, that two lost souls could find their way in each other. And as New York lit up like a sea of stars below them,